As a novice firefighter confronted with one of the most devastating wildfires in his profession, the magnitude of the situation proved to be too much for him. Despite the overwhelming challenge, he and his fellow firefighters labored tirelessly to salvage whatever they could. During the rescue mission, he stumbled upon a vulnerable baby bear, and without a second thought, he decided to remove it from harm's way. However, what unfolded next was nothing short of remarkable. At the tender age of 12, Adam made up his mind to become a firefighter, much to the chagrin of his mother. She naturally preferred a safer occupation for her child, perhaps one in an office that posed no risks, but she didn't dwell on it too much, thinking that he would change his mind before completing his education. As it turned out, his mother's assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Adam wasted no time after finishing school and immediately enrolled in fire school, driven by his unwavering determination to help save people's lives in any capacity possible. Having grown up in California, he was all too familiar with the devastating impact of rampaging wildfires, and he held the firefighting teams in the highest regard. Achieving his goal of joining one of those firefighting teams was a lifelong aspiration for Adam, and he eventually realized it. However, the path to get there was anything but easy. The demanding tests and grueling training were enough to dissuade even the most determined individuals, let alone the perils of battling the fires themselves. Adam vividly recalled feeling inundated by the sheer intensity of the blaze the first time he accompanied the team. However, he was determined to help solve the problem. Of course, dealing with building fires and wildfires were two completely different things. He quickly came to realize that it was in the wilderness that he truly belonged. His love for nature only encouraged this, so he opted to change his training to specifically outdoors. That's when he really started to see the power of fire up close and personal. A raging wildfire can move faster than most people realize, so much so that animals, whose sensors are stronger than ours, sometimes fail to get out of harm's way in time. This was the hardest part of Adam's job. The aftermath of the fire and the poor animals that didn't make it out in time. It was always a horrible sight, one that motivated him to try and be the very best he could at his job. If not to save the surrounding suburbs, but also the innocent lives of the animals who make their homes in these forests. Of course, it was, however, all about timing. How fast was the wind blowing, which direction it was blowing, and the conditions of the forest. Some fires were fiercer than others, and so they didn't really stand a chance of staving animals. Adam learned this in his first summer on the job. It was the height of fire season in Northern California, and the fires were fierce, thanks to a terrible wind coming off the coast. The fires were fueled and moving fast. Faster than anyone could have anticipated. They initially were dropped off on a site ready to move and start digging trenches. When the fire caught up with them too quickly, they were forced to evacuate before they could finish and help stop the fire's movements. It was that day that Adam happened to see a doll with her baby jumping frantically trying to escape the fire. It was an image that would be etched into his memory for life. He remembers feeling so helpless. He felt that he should have been able to help the poor animals. There were many more like this that particular season. On some trips, they ended up being more successful than others. However, it was hard work. Adam hadn't seen his family in weeks and became very exhausted. His teammates only encouraged him and told him it would get easier over time. He would just have to trust the process. He was passionate about his job, so he just had to draw inspiration from that. On more than one occasion, though, they managed to save whole neighborhoods, ones that had small children and elderly people. This helped to reassure him that he was doing what he set out, save lives. It wasn't until he saved one particularly special life that he truly felt fulfilled. It was a dark time in California. 2 years had passed since Adam had started in the wildfire division. They were experiencing the worst fire season the country had ever seen before. So much so that they were bringing in firefighting teams from around the world to try and help. Cities in the northern parts of the state were evacuated and people were needing rescue all over. It was straight out of a horror movie. The skies were painted red from the flames, and people were getting severely sick from smoke inhalation. Adam and his team had been on rotation, fighting the same fire for over a week. Every time they felt they were getting somewhere, the wind would change, and the fire would shift direction, causing more damage. It was extremely stressful. Members of organizations were trying desperately to get food and supplies to the brave firefighters, but sometimes it wasn't enough, or they just couldn't reach them. Adam and his team were exhausted beyond relief. Their spirits were low and their bodies were starting to fail them. They needed a break in the wind, just a gap where all the teams could work together at once and control the fire enough for it to just burn out. This came just 2 days later. Adam and his team were on rest when all of a sudden they heard bustling and shouting from outside. Sure enough, the wind had completely dropped. Everyone around them was going mad with disbelief. This was the first time in almost 9 days that there had been no wind. Everyone came out of rest and went straight to work. They were determined to take knock at this fire once and for all. Adam felt rejuvenated just like the rest of the team and quickly went to work. He was determined to get the fire to move back, even if it was just a bit. Progress was progress. He grabbed all his equipment and went to a spot where they could work alongside his team. He was busy with a trench when all of a sudden he heard a noise. At first, he thought he was just carrying someone back at camp squealing. Shaking it off, he put his head back down and went back to work. But then he heard it. He asked his team members if they had heard it, but was met with crazy looks. Adam decided it was best to just keep it to himself. However, when he heard it for the third time, he was determined to find out where it was coming from. What he did next was shocking. Adam then did what no firefighter should ever do. He stepped over the existing trench and walked towards the burning woods. His teammates immediately started yelling at him and calling him back, but Adam refused to hear them. He needed to find the source of the crying. When he did, he could hardly believe his eyes. When the squeal came for the fourth time, Adam was close enough to hear it loudly. This helped him change his direction and find the source. As he rounded a tree, he saw a big log that had been lying there for years, and just below it, a cowering baby bear. The poor thing couldn't have been more than a month old. It was sitting at the base of the log, clearly anxious and scared, squealing for its mother. Adam looked around, but just saw destruction and no mom in sight. How this little bear had survived until now, Adam hardly knew. But what he did was that he needed to help the little guy quickly. Without much hesitation, Adam walked towards the little bear and scooped him up in his arms like a child. Promptly, he hastened his pace towards the station. Upon breaking through the tree line, his colleagues erupted in jubilant cheers upon seeing him safe and sound. However, when they glimpsed what he had in his possession, they could scarcely believe their eyes. Adam carefully brought the tiny bear back to their base camp out of harm's way and tended to its needs, providing water and food while also checking for any potential injuries. Thankfully, the bear was unharmed, but it was what occurred afterward that astonished everyone present. After Adam confirmed that the bear was secure, he stood up and attempted to walk away, but to his surprise, the little bear followed him. Despite Adam's attempts to dissuade the bear from following him, the tiny creature persisted in drawing nearby. That's when something truly extraordinary occurred. The small bear approached the firefighter and tightly embraced his leg, wrapping all 4 sets of paws around it and refusing to let go. Adam was taken aback by the unexpected show of affection from the little creature. Despite his efforts to detach the bear and hand it over to a colleague, the bear sprinted back and clung to Adam's leg once more, seemingly determined to stay with him. Adam was utterly astounded. They eventually discovered someone else whom the bear was content to cling to while Adam resumed his duties. Nonetheless, it was an event that left an indelible mark on him, one that motivated him throughout the remainder of his firefighting career.